doing, friends? Big episode of Scott Fox After 9 coming your way today. This episode is one that I really hope you can listen to because this is about the pandemic. Today, I'm going to take several hours of congressional testimony by Dr. Anthony Fauci yesterday, and I'm going to condense it into one episode of the pod. By the time you're done, you will have heard all of the important parts. Also coming up on this episode, I'm going to try and touch on the Toronto mayoral race, and if I have time, I've got the news conference from yesterday in Alberta between Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Lots to get to, but I don't want to rush through the Dr. Fauci stuff. I'm going to take my time. We should understand exactly what happened during COVID and why Dr. Fauci is pleading the fifth. So that's coming up in a sec. Before I get to that, though, a quick programming note. I had told you that today I would likely have a special guest in Brantford Six Nations Member of Parliament, Larry Brock. I'm a big fan of Larry. He is a real good MP. He is great in the House of Commons. He's great in the committee hearings. Love listening to him, and I love his perspective, particularly on law and order, and that goes back to his days as a Crown prosecutor. Here's the thing. Larry is stuck in Ottawa at the moment, so we've bumped the interview. It's going to happen on Tuesday instead, so there will be at least one new episode of Scott Fox After 9 next week, and that will be with Larry Brock from the Conservative Party of Canada. I also want to let you know tomorrow I will have a silent date update for you. That's going to be a lot of fun. Anna Almeida is going to join me for that. So we're going real old school, and I'll get you caught up on the antics and adventures of the silent date couple. This episode is brought to you by The Cocking Store. They're at thecockingstore.com, and I'll tell you more about these beauties a little bit later on in the episode. This first clip that I want to play for you, this is from yesterday in Washington. Congressional testimony by Dr. Anthony Fauci. You likely already remember Dr. Fauci is the guy who led the U.S. government's response to the coronavirus.
Vaccines that are really quite effective. The mRNA vaccine, highly effective, extraordinarily efficacious, 94 to 95% for mild to moderate disease, and virtually 100% efficacious, because the real world effectiveness is even more impressive than the results of the clinical trial.
Just a little bit of Dr. Fauci, the man who assured us that he had COVID on lock. He was dealing with all of these unforeseen twists and turns as they came, and he told us that vaccine was safe and effective. He also created all of those draconian anti-COVID measures, the school lockdowns, which were so devastating for so many kids. The overwhelming amount of people that were in our healthcare system, some of them that died alone because of Dr. Fauci's policies. We now know that we probably could have treated people with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. That was a conspiracy theory during COVID, and one of the people who shot that down real quick was Dr. Anthony Fauci. And part of the reason he did that is because if there was a treatment that was available for COVID, they would not be able to get emergency authorization for the COVID vaccines. And those vaccines turned into $200 billion was spent on COVID vaccines. Man, those pharmaceutical companies made out pretty well, didn't they? Well, let's get to the bottom of what actually happened, the best we can. I'm going to tell you here that Dr. Fauci is going to plead the fifth, but you've still got to listen to this line of questioning from various U.S. members of Congress. I want to start off with Senator Josh Hawley. This is a long clip. I might not let it roll right to the end, but I want you to hear this line of questioning from Senator Hawley and listen to the amount of times Dr. Fauci could answer the question, but he decides he doesn't want to incriminate himself. When someone pleads the fifth, that is them saying, I don't want to answer because I might incriminate myself and indicate that I've done something wrong. That's the Coles Notes on the Fifth Amendment. Here is yesterday in Washington.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich. While people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich, and not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it?
Is that a question?
It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards. And you did all of it. And the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor and you're playing one on TV. But this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Josh Hawley. I know that was a really long clip, but I hope you listened to that. Every single time Dr. Fauci had the opportunity to set the record straight if anything that Josh Hawley said there was incorrect. Every single time he pled the fifth. Every single time he refused to answer the question because he might incriminate himself. So that's the first thing. Dr. Fauci got rich. A lot of people suspected there were a lot of people, including politicians, that were getting rich during COVID. We now know Dr. Fauci got rich. $12 million worth. He's getting a $400,000 a year pension. He was collecting cash awards and using his staff to try and apply for them when he should have been dealing with COVID. That's Dr. Anthony Fauci. He did say something, though. Listen to this.
During and after the COVID pandemic, I have appeared multiple times for hearings in the Senate and the House, usually under oath, and sat for several days-long transcribed sworn interviews and repeated slanderous comments and intimidating me, pledges that I end up, in his words, would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
Hey, if you tell the truth and you didn't do anything wrong, there's no reason to plead the fifth. It is not something you can incriminate yourself in if you tell the truth and you didn't do anything wrong. But no, Dr. Fauci, he decided to plead the fifth to every single question, including what color is your tie and what day of the week is it. Dr. Fauci was incredibly evasive yesterday, would not answer direct questions from these senators and congresspeople. Now let's go to Senator Moreno questioning Dr. Fauci. This is about a minute and a half long.
Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being. Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country.
How many people are feeling that exact same way? How many people got shamed? How many people lost their job? How many people were separated from loved ones? How many people didn't get to say a proper goodbye to one of their grandparents or parents when they passed away alone in a hospital? All because of the nonsense from Dr. Anthony Fauci that had no basis in science. They shamed you. They called you a tinfoil wearing hat conspiracy theorist if you dared to question what came out of Dr. Fauci during COVID-19. It was disgraceful how people got treated during COVID-19. Let's go to another one. This is Senator Ron Johnson confronting Dr. Fauci. This is only 30 seconds.
So there's no evidence. There's no evidence that ivermectin is helpful. On that exact same day, and I've got the studies right here. There was a website that was tracking the random controlled studies. Here they are, showing 60, 70% efficacy of ivermectin. The same day you say there's no evidence, there was all kinds of evidence.
That was just a little bit of it, just a little bit. He held up a stack of documents. Dr. Fauci, in order to get that emergency authorization for the COVID vaccines, emergency authorization so it didn't have to go through all the same trials that a typical vaccine would. They had to get this in as many arms as possible. They needed emergency authorization. The only way they could get emergency authorization was to say there's no drugs that work in treating COVID, so we need a vaccine. Well, there's Senator Johnson saying there were dozens of different studies, peer-reviewed, that said ivermectin was an effective treatment against COVID-19. Dr. Fauci shot it down. What was he saying about ivermectin? And he had other regular people parroting it. Oh, you can't take the ivermectin. That's a horse dewormer. Ivermectin is an extremely common, generic, and inexpensive drug. Doctors prescribe it all the time. It could have saved lives during COVID, but Fauci didn't want that. Fauci wanted the vaccines going out there, and he wasn't going to get the vaccines unless he slammed ivermectin. And anybody who dared to say, it seems like this is effective, he shot it down. That could have saved lives. Let's go to Senator Ashley Moody. She is a Republican from Florida.
I'm just very interested in why it was this date. Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014 was also the year that the NIAID or NIH began funding EcoHealth Alliance's Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And this is the same grant that funded the work on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute on Virology. Millions of Americans are questioning what happened during COVID, why we were given misleading information, misleading advice, why you gave conflicting statements based on, I guess, how you were feeling that day. And Americans, rightfully, we lost over 1 million Americans.
Yeah, Americans and Canadians, people around the world were very, very conflicted on what was going on because in a lot of cases, it didn't even make sense. Do you remember when they all had us walking in the same direction at the grocery store? They actually had arrows put on the floor at the grocery store and they said we could be safe grocery shopping if we all walked in the same direction. We all questioned that. Regular, reasonable people knew that was nonsense. The 6 feet rule, stay 6 feet apart. Social distancing, that's what they called it. That was another Dr. Fauci beauty. We have a right to know where that came from because it upended a lot of lives and a lot of people died. These senators are trying to get to the bottom of it, and this guy's pleading the fifth. Doesn't want to answer because he may incriminate himself. By the way, what Senator Moody there was referring to was the pardon that Joe Biden gave him went all the way back to 2014. Why would he need a pardon all the way back to 2014? Well, it was around then when all of a sudden some American funding started going into some pretty dangerous Wuhan lab bat coronavirus research. Was this planned? Who planned it? What was the goal? Those are 3 great questions that it is totally fair game to ask now. Dr. Fauci asserting his Fifth Amendment privilege when he was asked direct questions about his own actions is wildly irresponsible. Let's go back to 2022. Here's Dr. Fauci talking about this day.
Well, if I become a punching bag, I'm a punching bag, but I am very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee. I have nothing to hide. I can explain and validate everything that I've done. So, it's going to be inconvenient if they actually are out there essentially threatening to make my life miserable. But I'm going to do what I need to do, and that is cooperate fully because we have nothing to hide at all.
Dr. Fauci back then said he had nothing to hide. He could justify everything he did. He's even got a pardon. And he still pled the fifth to every single question that came up yesterday. I don't know that innocent people do that. There's some people saying, well, they really want to get him, so he could only really hurt himself if he answers those questions. How about if he didn't do anything wrong and he tells the truth? No, that wouldn't happen. That's not a reasonable argument. Dr. Fauci owes us answers. And since he's not answering, go. I want every one of the people on that Senate committee to start looking deeper into Dr. Fauci. You've got his diary. You've got most of the emails, the ones that they didn't delete. And by the way, Dr. Fauci himself several times asked people to delete emails after they read ones that he sent them. Again, I don't think innocent people do that. What is he hiding? And what the hell did they do to us? What the hell did they put in our arms? Why did that need to happen when there was a treatment available? Was it all about putting mRNA in people's body? Was it about selling more vaccines for the pharmaceutical companies? What was it? What did they do to us? Now can we finally take people seriously that say they've got a vaccine injury? There are thousands of them. But anytime somebody tries to come forward, they get written off as crazy. They get shamed. It's almost like they don't dare tell their story. And that's wrong. I don't know where the Fauci thing is going, but God, do I ever want them to get to the bottom of this. Go right to the top and see how far the rot goes. You've got Dr. Fauci here. I think everybody who has listened to this can probably tell at this point something went on with Dr. Fauci. It wasn't the way they presented it to the people back then. People who were genuinely scared and trusted that man. When he said social distancing, 6 feet apart, they trusted him with their lives. And a lot of people lost him. 1 million dead Americans. Tens of thousands of dead Canadians. He wasn't giving advice based on science. He was all about his own image. He was collecting money off of this. That's certainly how it seems, since he won't answer those questions and he pled the fifth. If he's got nothing to hide and he didn't do anything wrong and he's telling the truth, why would he plead the fifth? You've got to ask yourself that question. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just set the record straight? Why wouldn't he say, no, that absolutely came from somebody who ate a bat at a wet market in Wuhan and then got on a plane and flew to LA and bam, the virus circulated all around the world? Why wouldn't he double down on that if he believes that? Why wouldn't he firmly deny that he was responsible for funding any gain of function research? Why wouldn't he firmly deny the accusations that the vaccines were not safe and effective? Why wouldn't he double down and say, oh no, those vaccines were safe and effective? Why wouldn't he do that? He pled the fifth on everything. One more on this one. I want to do this last one. This is Senator Rick Scott.
Dr. Fauci, I want to close with this. Here's how he impacted my family and people close to me. I have daughters with children. You can't imagine the questions they had around vaccines for their kids and themselves, and the pressure, the unbelievable pressure to make the right decision for their health. I can tell you pregnant women who worked with me were so scared because every time they went to the doctor, they were told something different about taking the vaccine. And you caused this. Imagine being a mom trying to protect their kids, or an expectant mother trying to figure out what to do. Every 3 weeks, a doctor tells you a new set of guidance on a vaccine. The haphazard information you released and pushed on the American people with little research is appalling, and why there's so much distrust in our institutions today. That trust is crucial to public health, and you, more than any person or event in my lifetime, have destroyed that trust for millions of Americans. You lied to hundreds of millions of people amid the worst public health crisis in a century. You failed to follow your own guidance. You forced people to watch their loved ones die alone over the phone. It's disgusting. You destroyed the federal government's credibility when it comes to public health. We have entire generations of Americans who, rightfully so, do not trust our institution to keep people safe because of you. This has destroyed decades of progress and lifetimes of work because you wanted to fuel your own ego and be the center of attention. What would you do differently knowing what you know today, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
All the evidence is right here, and you still can't bring yourself to tell the truth or apologize because you received an auto-pin pardon from a staffer in the Biden White House. If we have another pandemic tomorrow, millions could die because of what you did to make Americans lose trust in their government when it comes to medicine and health care. How many families have you apologized to had to watch their loved ones die alone? You breached public trust, and now you're hiding behind a fraudulent pardon. Your legacy will not be as a man that saved America from COVID, but as a man who destroyed the public trust in America's public health institutions in exchange for 5 minutes of fame.
You know, that's a great point from Senator Rick Scott there. How many expecting parents went to their doctor and all they wanted was unbiased information? No parent wants to make the wrong decision for their kid. They went to their doctor, they trusted their doctor, and their doctor got their info probably from Fauci and the COVID table. Get your kid vaccinated. And parents didn't want to do it. There's a lot of parents that did not want to make that decision and put that shot in their baby's arm. But the doctor pressured them into it. And it wasn't necessary. We had other ways to treat this. In a lot of cases, those kids weren't in any danger at all. They trusted Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci broke the trust. There is now an entire generation of people that will never, ever get vaccinated again. And that's scary and sad at the same time. And that's because of Dr. Fauci.
There's a new entrant today into the mayor's race, Chris Alexander. He says that he's running because people in this city feel that Toronto is adrift under your leadership. What's your response to him entering the race? Well, local democracy matter. The election is 3 months from now. Lots of time to talk about the election. I plan to do that in the fall. Do you see his candidacy making your path to victory easier, that it could split the vote among the center-right people like Bradford's supporters? Today I'm focusing on the last council. We have a lot of important items. In fact, I think last I checked, it was, members' motion was close to 100. It's past 80 already anyway. So we have a lot of very important work ahead of us. It is last council, and all the councillors have many items that they need to deal with before the election. There's plenty of time after Labor Day for myself to deal with the upcoming election. It's 3 months from now.
You know, it occurs to me, if you are new to the pod or you're not really familiar with Canadian or Ontario politics, you might have a hard time believing that woman there is actually the mayor of Toronto. Olivia Chow saying she didn't really say anything, but yesterday the Toronto mayoral race did get another entrant, a former Conservative cabinet minister. He is a former ambassador to Afghanistan. He was the immigration minister. Chris Alexander is going to be running for mayor of Toronto. What the reporters were trying to get Olivia Chow to comment on is the fact that Chris Alexander and Brad Bradford, the other leading candidate here, are both center-right. They would probably fall into the political spectrum as conservatives. And Olivia Chow basically got handed a gift here. At one point, she had a massive lead over Brad Bradford. That lead is now down to less than 10 percentage points. Depending on how many people vote, that's got to be within the margin of error. Olivia Chow was going to be in the fight for her life to try and beat Brad Bradford. But now, a gift. Somebody else who appeals to people on the right or the center-right voters, and they split the vote. Olivia Chow wins it. That's an interesting development. Olivia Chow didn't take the bait. She said she'll talk about it after Labor Day. I think that's perfectly appropriate. She's right. The election is not for 3 months. I don't think that we need to necessarily talk too much about it now, but it is an interesting development. Let's hear from this new mayoral candidate for Toronto, Chris Alexander.
As I say, grew up here. Toronto was always home. Came back here in 2022 to raise a family. I have seen how frustrated Canadians are with the pressures we're under as a country, but I've seen especially how frustrated my neighbors are with services that don't work, with the disappointment of not being able to get to an appointment on time, with not being able to find daycare or a job in my field or education or housing to study or to take that entry-level job that I know is available for me. These are issues where City Hall has an enormous role to play. This is where the rubber hits the road. From fire hydrants to sidewalks to streets, the city is responsible for a lot of things that make our lives either work or not. And I'm frustrated that the team that's been in City Hall for the last 3 years has not taken the difficult decisions, that has not given Toronto that sense of direction that it always had, and that it needs to have to be able to lead both as a business center and as a center for education, health, and the overall Canadian community. I want to give us that sense of direction back. I think the experience I've had as a diplomat, as a problem solver, as a leader of a major federal portfolio is relevant. I think it's going to take an outsider, to be honest, someone who hasn't been on council, to get this city back on track, to bring the ideas that are in this city to bear on the challenges that we face. There are a lot of people in the city that are the best in the world at what they do, but they don't feel like they're being heard at City Hall. They don't feel like they are being invited, welcomed to have an impact on the city that they love, and to really drag it into this modern era where we're under pressures. We're under pressures from our closest neighbor, the United States.
I don't know what the hell is wrong with this guy, but it seems to me that if you're announcing that you're running to be mayor of one of the biggest cities in North America, you would at least be a little more familiar with what is provincial jurisdiction. You would be at least a little more familiar with what the issues are, and maybe, just maybe, put out a little bit of policy there, Mr. Alexander. Now, it's still early, 3 months from the election, but if that's the launch, I don't know that Brad Bradford really has that much to worry about. They did ask him, though, the media asked Brad yesterday what he thinks of this center-right candidate, quote unquote. I haven't heard anything, by the way, that would scream to me that he's a conservative. But anyway, he was a conservative cabinet minister. So there you go. Chris Alexander was the topic. Brad Bradford was asked about it yesterday.
You know, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think like a lot of Torontonians, I had never heard of him. When I looked him up, what I saw was pretty concerning. This was a guy who stood up on a national stage and called for a cultural, barbaric practices snitch line. And, it sunk the Conservative Party's prospects in that election. But I think even more important, it was deeply hurtful to different communities here in Canada, particularly the Muslim community, and in the most diverse city in the world, somebody who harbors those views. I think that makes you unfit for this office.
Okay. It's going to be an interesting 3 months, friends. That's awesome. I'm not going to have time on this episode to do the news conference yesterday with Prime Minister Carney and Premier Smith, but I'll tell you that there was a dynamite drop in there from Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, talking about equalization payments. So I'll try and weave those in at some point in the future, or you can see that on YouTube. It's just about everywhere. My friends, have a great day. Tomorrow, there will be a Silent Date update. There's going to be at least one episode next week, and that is going to have the interview with Larry Brock. I'm really looking forward to that. There's going to be some good content in there for you. This episode has been brought to you by The Caulking Store. Shop online at thecaulkingstore.com. Remember, good caulk was hard to find until they showed up. They are conveniently located right where Etobicoke and Mississauga meet at Renforth and the 401. But hey, even if you can't get there, and it doesn't matter if you're a master builder, a contractor, a DIY warrior, or somewhere in between, they deliver. They've got fast delivery if you're on the site and you need something. The wrong sealant is expensive and repair costs are expensive. Expensive is expensive. The Caulking Store is going to help you find the right professional grade sealant, and they'll do it for less. They carry all the big names, and not to mention, by the way, they do have a satisfaction guarantee. They've got a low price guarantee, a senior discount. They've got contractor pricing, and again, fast and reliable delivery. Canadian owned and operated, The Caulking Store. Visit them at thecaulkingstore.com. And I'll have a brand new episode coming your way tomorrow. Oh, yeah.